You want me to just, for easy purposes, introduce?
Yeah, right while he does.
Yeah, you can do
I
it.
thought it was perfect.
That one's coming from where
Let's all stand right here.
Yeah, let me, where's the can, all right, whatever you are. So we on? Good evening. Good evening. I'm Tom Hall, Town Manager, and tonight the Town Council's meeting in workshop form. So it's very informal. In fact, everyone's having a bite to eat as I speak right now. Tonight we'll be doing a couple of things. First, we'll start with Dan Bacon, the Town Planner, who would like to spend 20 minutes or so and just brief the Council on 3 or 4 projects that have come through the Transportation Committee that was appointed by Council. These are projects that have been funded through the budget process, but we wanted to give you all a better chance to understand the details of those projects before we move on to the next steps. And then following that, we'd like to get into a conversation with the Council around so-called business friendliness and some of the efforts that we've had in the past, and more importantly, what we can do in the future. So without further ado, I'll have Dan Bacon talk about our transportation projects.
Thanks, Tom. And also here this evening is former Councilor Ray Corda, member of the Transportation Committee, Jim Wendell, Town Engineer, who have been just as involved as I have in the Transportation Committee's work. Councilor Sullivan's the Council liaison and member on the committee. And I would say the committee's accomplished a fair amount since I think just last summer the council established this committee, and it was recommended in the comprehensive plan for the town to have a committee dedicated to looking at transportation issues, planning, etc. And the committee's work, per the council's request, was to start work by focusing on the Oak Hill area. And the committee's jumped right into that work. And they've been using past studies and plans to kind of educate them and inform them on what to look at and the work that they're doing. Up on the screen are 3 of those past studies and plans that they're using as reference. In 2005, the town conducted a very comprehensive town-wide transportation study, in it recommending Transportation Committee. And then right after that, in 2006, there was an Oak Hill intersection study that looked at a wide range of possible improvements to the Oak Hill intersection, and didn't result in improvements. That's why we're still looking at it. And then more recently, there was a pedestrian-focused plan conducted for the Oak Hill area. So all 3 of these studies and plans have helped informed the committee's work on this particular area. And really as a starting point, as they began to look at the Oak Hill intersection, the surrounding area, and roads that come into it, the committee first wanted to establish goals and objectives for what they're designing for before they jumped into the design itself. And this is, I know there's a lot of words up on the screen, but I wanted to start with this because it's really been the directive for what to plan for. So I'll quickly read it. The design goals and objectives was to create a plan to enhance the Oak Hill intersection and surrounding transportation infrastructure in a way that, number 1, makes the area safer, more user-friendly for pedestrians and bicycles. That makes the area safer for motorists by resolving high accident locations. There's a handful of spots at the intersection or just adjacent to the intersection that are very prone to accidents, and the committee felt that's an important thing to try to resolve. That modifies the intersection and the surrounding roadways in a manner that complements and reinforces Oak Hill as a center for the community. So that one was important to the committee in that improvements, changes should be made in the context of keeping and making Oak Hill more of a center, more of a village, more of a place, as opposed to necessarily just adding more lanes and making it more highway oriented. So that's an important piece of their objectives. And then lastly, it indicates that the town would rely on broader, more regional improvements to the Greater Portland's transportation system to help accommodate current and future regional travel, meaning that we shouldn't necessarily solve the region's transportation issues at the Oak Hill intersection. There could be ways to encourage more traffic to use the main turnpike, to use Route 1 up Higas Parkway to Payne Road, use alternative roadways that have capacity for the traffic, as opposed to trying to necessarily enable everybody to go through Oak Hill even if they're going to places way beyond, whether it's north or south, or east or west for that matter. So those are some initial goals and objectives. I think Councilor Sullivan shared these with the entire council some months ago as we were beginning this work. So as the first bullet lists, pedestrian improvements are a high priority, and so the committee's been focused on that. And here I have, actually before the committee's work, I get into the committee's work, there are a fair amount of plans and potential improvements to pedestrians that are already in the planning stages or likely to occur in the next 6 months to a year and a half or more. One is the fact that the town applied to the DOT Safe Routes to School grant application, and that's funding for pedestrians and walking to school, better access to schools. And we've already applied for proposing sidewalks and crosswalks along Gorham Road near the library, from basically the library up to Sawyer Road along Gorham Road, which is a pretty heavily walked area today that doesn't have sidewalks. So that's state funding we've applied for. Hopefully we get some of that funding that we've requested. Coupled with that, the new Wentworth project is changing how they're accessing the new school. The current intermediate school driveway is going to become more of a parking area for the ball fields. It's not going to be as busy an access point. So there's some changes that are going to occur on Gorham Road that the school department's piggybacking on and adding a crosswalk, making this a much safer crossing from the school campus across Gorham Road to Hannaford Drive to tie into the sidewalk that serves Hannaford Drive, Oak Hill Plaza, etc. So that's in the works, and that's likely to occur when the schools transition, when the current school closes and the new school opens. That's when those improvements can be made. Some other pedestrian-type improvements that are slated to happen are courtesy some new development. The assisted living facility on Black Point Road is adding a sidewalk along their frontage on Black Point Road. Centervale Farm is adding an additional building, a new office building, so they're going to add sidewalks along Route 1 on their side of the street there. Currently, there are not sidewalks there. And then the picture that's up here is the development project, the Biddeford Savings development coupled with a coffee shop, which is just south of Centervale Farm. And they're going to be adding sidewalks as well and a crosswalk from the south side of Route 1 over to the north side, the Hannaford Drive intersection, and the sidewalks on that side of Route 1, which dovetails nicely with Centervale's plans. So there's some sidewalks and pedestrian improvements that are going to be accomplished by those developments to help the overall network. This map is probably hard to see from your seats, but this just highlights the areas I just spoke of where improvements are likely. Up, pointer out. This red line shows a potential sidewalk from the library up to Sawyer Road along Gorham Road, the Safe Routes to School application. This purple circle highlights the intersection at Hannaford Drive where an improved crosswalk is going to happen with the Wentworth School. This is the area I just spoke of along Route 1, Biddeford Savings, Centervale, Hannaford Drive intersection on Route 1, and then the assisted living facility adding a sidewalk along Black Point Road. So those are some things that are happening outside of the committee's work, and to complement those efforts, the committee focused on really 3 different things for pedestrian improvements in Oak Hill. One, to improve the crossing of the Oak Hill intersection. Right now, it's a very intimidating intersection to try to cross. So the committee looked closely at making some improvements there to make it more safer to cross, more friendly to cross, provide more priority for pedestrians. The second thing is a sidewalk along Black Point Road from the Oak Hill intersection down to the Eastern Road on the Amados side of Black Point Road, so on the south side of Black Point Road. And then coupled with that, an Eastern Trail crossing, improving the Eastern Trail crossing of Black Point Road. Right now, there's a crosswalk and some signs, but it's not particularly visible, it's not particularly safe. Motorists don't pay a lot of attention to pedestrians, so that was a high priority by the committee. Also, the Eastern Trail Management District, the overall agency that looks at the Eastern Trail, and DOT for that matter, have been concerned about that crosswalk. So I'm going to quickly go through some of the conceptual plans to give you a sense for what these improvements entail, and then we can get into details and questions and such. This concept plan shows the Oak Hill intersection, which is up here. The Amados site is here, and this is Black Point Road. And so, as I mentioned, the committee looked at crosswalk improvements of the Oak Hill intersection. I realize it's hard to see these black lines from many of your seats, but right now there's a crosswalk of Route 1 from Amados to, it's the mobile station at this point, I think.
It's, yeah, it's a mobile.
Yeah, Irving a little while ago, and Exxon before that. And then there's a crosswalk from the gas station over to Walgreens. There is not a crosswalk today across Black Point Road to the other corner, nor is there one from Walgreens over towards the Citgo station. So given the assisted living facility and the fact that they're putting in a sidewalk here and may have some pedestrian activity, and also just the general need to provide better crossings, the committee is recommending a crosswalk on the other 2 legs of the intersection. So crossing Black Point Road and crossing Route 1 on the other side, the Walgreens to the gas station side. Coupled with that, there's some space in Route 1. Right now, there's a flush concrete median that could be built up and curbed to provide a little bit more protection for pedestrians to cross and to make the crossing not as imposing. So the committee's recommending doing some raised islands in the middle of Route 1, using that space that's currently the flush concrete. And then the committee's been considering the idea of adding a wider island in Gorham Road to make that an easier, safer crossing. So that's the general concept behind the Oak Hill intersection. There's more work to be done by the committee to make sure the traffic movements still work well with this design, and there's also some other opportunities for kind of narrowing the intersection, giving it more pedestrian priority while still enabling good movement of vehicles through the intersection. So this was one of the CIPs approved by the council. This is the general concept, and I know the committee is going to still work on the details. Coupled with that, as I mentioned, is the Black Point Road sidewalk, and the committee looked a lot at which side of Black Point Road to establish a sidewalk from this area down to the Eastern Trail and Road, and after weighing the pros and cons, felt that the south side, or the west side, however you want to look at it, the Amados side, was best for the short term to have a sidewalk. There's a good number of homes along this stretch of Black Point Road. Then there's the town property, the old Oak Hill School, which enables some flexibility in terms of where the sidewalk goes. The Eastern Trail is going to come out on that side of Black Point Road. So it just seemed like a more feasible, appropriate side for the sidewalk at this point. It also enables just one crossing for school kids to cross and then be on the proper side of Gorham Road to get to the school campus, to town hall, some key destinations. So that's some of the reasons why this side was chosen. As hopefully you can see from your seats, in this stretch of road, the first segment of Black Point Road from the intersection, the sidewalk is going to be at a curb. There's going to be a new curb, actually the whole length of Black Point Road, but in particular right here, because there's not a curb today. The curb starts close to Carol's house, actually, further down.
Houses above me.
So that'll provide protection for the sidewalk. It also helps in terms of some drainage improvements that can be made. So in this location, because of how close the houses are to the street, the committee's recommending the sidewalk be right along a curb rather than having an esplanade, a separation from the curb, so that the sidewalk can stay in the road right-of-way, so there won't be any need to acquire land, and to maintain the size of the front yards of the folks that live along there. This next slide shows where it transitions from a sidewalk at the curb to an area where you can have more separation from the road, an esplanade. So this is Thornton Road here, where it comes out with Black Point Road. Carol lives right here. This is the old Oak Hill School, condo development, a camper down Elm here. So here is where the sidewalk can transition to have an esplanade to meander through some nice trees that are on the town property to avoid the sign there. And again, curbing would be involved here. There's some curbing today. Actually, there's a section missing right now here because it's the bituminous curbing. So the proposal is to replace that with concrete curbing, which is lasts a lot longer, and it's really the town standard at this point for curbing. This is the last segment of proposed sidewalk. This is where Black Point Road transitions down the hill here. There's some nice big maple trees along Camper Down Elm Drive in the field there. In this location, the proposal is to go back along a curb for some distance to get by those old trees and to not impact them. There's an area, there's a shelf, if you will, right behind the curb that is wide enough for the sidewalk, and then once the sidewalk gets past those trees, there again can be an esplanade, a separation from the road, so walkers can be away from the busy Black Point Road. And then the sidewalk plan terminates down at the Eastern Road and Trail intersection. And this dovetails with the third bullet, which was improvements to the Eastern Trail crossing of Black Point Road. And this generally shows what's envisioned for a better crosswalk of Black Point Road. Today, in the area, you might be able to see this white striping. That's the current crosswalk. And after a lot of analysis by Jim, Mike Shaw, our transportation engineer, the thinking is to put the crosswalk on the other side to provide better visibility by motorists seeing people waiting to cross, and to connect into a short sidewalk segment on the north side of Black Point Road along Eastern Road. And also at the same time to actually narrow Black Point Road here a little bit so that the crossing is shorter, and also to eliminate the current hazard of what's happening with the slip lane. Right now, people often are slowing down or stopping motorists to take a left, and they have to wait because there's a lot of traffic coming up Black Point Road. And there's pretty common tendency to swing around those vehicles without really having to slow down. And that presents some safety issues for motorists. Sometimes if people are stopped because there's someone in the crosswalk, it's not necessarily that they're waiting to take a left. So there's a lot of concern by the police, by DOT, and everyone about the safety of crossing here, and we think that narrowing Black Point Road in this location to eliminate that slip lane, but still have a shoulder so that cars can get around, cars that are stopped or waiting, but at a much slower speed is a safer situation, calms traffic and helps pedestrians. Coupled with that, sort of the third important piece of this improvement is the committee's been researching these pedestrian signals where they are, and Jim will know the right terminology, they're rapid flashing signals that are, pedestrian approaches it, they're like a crosswalk signal, but on a traffic light, but specific to crossings that don't have traffic signals. You press the button and it warns motorists that someone's either in the crosswalk or waiting to cross. And given how the speed of traffic in this area, the hill, people's tendency, the volume of traffic, and sort of the lack of visibility of pedestrians, the committee thinks this is an important location to add that additional measure for the crosswalk. And we think that'll help give more priority and safety for pedestrians. So that's also been built into the CIP that the council considered and approved as part of your budget process. So that's really the package of improvements for the Oak Hill area down to the Eastern Trail and Road. I can quickly touch on a few other things, one of which the Transportation Committee has been working on, another that Public Works is proposing to pursue. This one, the Transportation Committee has worked on, it's very similar to the proposed crossing of Black Point Road for the Eastern Trail. This is Pine Point Road and the Eastern Trail crossing of Pine Point Road. This is the parking area that's heavily used today to park and use the Eastern Trail. It has many of the same challenges that Black Point Road does. It's not quite as challenging because there isn't a hill approaching the crosswalk, but everything else is pretty similar in terms of not great visibility of pedestrians and bikers waiting to cross the crosswalk. Pretty heavily traveled road, certainly, and higher speed traffic in this area. So a lot of the same measures are proposed here. A more visible crosswalk, narrowing of Pine Point Road where the crosswalk is and right around it so that motorists more naturally slow down, a shorter crossing for pedestrians and bikers, and also the flashing signals that can alert motorists that someone's using the crosswalk or about to use it. So pretty similar approach here on Pine Point Road to the Eastern Trail. And lastly, this is a project that the Transportation Committee, like I said, hasn't worked on, but the council considered as a CIP in your budget process, and I thought it was worth just quickly highlighting it given the topic. This is the proposal for replacing the sidewalk that exists currently, or replacing, upgrading sidewalk along Pine Point Road, essentially from a few properties down from the Dairy Corner down to the intersection with Dunstan Landing Road. The Dunstan Corner intersection improvements obviously are well underway, and they include sidewalk improvements along Route 1 to tie into the town's work 4 or 5 years ago south of Broad Turn and Pine Point Road. They also include upgrading the sidewalk down to roughly this point where the project limits end, but there wasn't funding and inclusion of replacing the current sidewalk from there down to Dunstan Landing Road as part of that state town project. So this CIP proposes to do that. Right now it's a asphalt bituminous sidewalk. It's in really tough shape. There isn't much curbing left. Pine Point Road's been paved enough that there's limited curbing separating the road and a pretty worn-out, beat-up sidewalk. So to match into the rest of the project, Mike at Public Works proposed a CIP to, while Grondin's out there doing that work, go in there and make that sidewalk new like the rest nearby. So that was a quick tour through a lot of transportation pedestrian improvements that are in the works, and wanted to update the council on these things and get your feedback, input, and as the committee continues to work on them.
So the timing on projects?
The timing on the projects are, we need to go from conceptual design, which is slides I showed you, to final design with the engineers, and that could be over the course of the summer. And if, June, July time period, and if the town wanted to, could go out to bid in August and proceed with some construction this fall of the Black Point Road sidewalk, the two eastern trail crossings. So the projects could happen as soon as the fall if we want them to, or they could be into spring. The Oak Hill intersection crossing still needs a little bit more work, so that may lag behind the Black Point sidewalk.
Just if I could, we'd look to bundle as much of the projects that make sense, that Oak Hill work is all in the same sort of skill set, if you will, and we think we would get better pricing by bundling 2 or 3 projects potentially. A lot of that depends on grant funding and some other pieces falling in place, but that's our intention. I guess before we move to the final design, there are a couple of decision points. The Transportation Committee had a lot of discussion around the specifications, and as Dan mentioned, the standard that the town has adopted over the last 5 or 6 or maybe at least 10 years, but all the new infrastructure we've built in that time frame, we've been using slip-form concrete. That's we believe far superior to blacktop or bituminous, and far less expensive than granite, which is the Cadillac, if you will. And so we don't suggest that we vary in that respect, but there is a decision point regarding what material the sidewalk is made of. The Transportation Committee has wrestled with this issue and feels quite strongly, and we have 2 members here and they can speak for themselves, that we ought to, we're doing this once, maybe in a lifetime, and we ought to make the extra investment, make it match with others, and really be durable over time. But there are potentially cost savings depending on that choice. So it would be great if we could get some finality from this group tonight as we move into this next final design and get ready for bidding, if you will.
Well, for me personally, I would like to do it as quick as possible. I think it's important. It all involves around safety issues, for me anyway. You look at these places and every site that we're doing, it's all about safety. And as far as the sidewalk goes, I personally am a quality person. I'd rather see quality than just getting it done cheap as we can, and we're back here in another 5 or 6 years trying to figure out what went wrong and spending more money. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. And I should have mentioned that all of the pricing that was presented through the budget process included the recommendations, included concrete, curb, and flat work, or the sidewalk material itself, which is clearly the best way from a construction point of view of going.
Well, I just wanted to add that, that's maybe a little too close. That I think repair of concrete later on down the road is much easier, and happens to be a lot more eye-appealing than repairing asphalt. And the same with the curbing. So, and, we're looking at the price of these projects. They may come in lower than expected. I think the main thing is the in the comprehensive plan, the people in town expected us to start, implementing some of the parts of the plan, and I think we've done all the easy work, like the rezoning, that didn't really cost a lot. So, and now it's time to do some of the, I think, the trail, pedestrian, bicycle. And there's 3 trail projects that are gonna be in the works eventually. I'm gonna say within the next, 5 years. And only one of those, I believe, is gonna be paid for by the town, which would be the Black Point Road, walkways and the Eastern Trail crosswalks. And one of them, I believe, Tom was saying that is going to be covered by a builder, part of the cost of that. Is that true?
Part of the Eastern Trail, the
Correct.
crossing on Black Point?
Yes.
Yes, the developer of the Eastern Village is responsible by way of their planning board approval to provide pedestrian safety improvements. He's not ready to make those investments, and Dan and his staff, and I'll be involved soon, will look to secure a written agreement whereby he pays us some money toward this investment we're considering to make now.
So some of these costs will be recuperated. And then we have impact fees for the
Great
Oak
point.
Hill.
Excellent point. The town has amassed impact fees, I can't quote the number, but sufficient to cover the first project that Dan described, the pedestrian improvements specific to the intersection. And we need to be somewhat careful as to how we use those funds. We really need to use them for the purpose they were collected. And there's just no question that pedestrian improvements at the intersection would qualify. When you get further away from it, I think it gets a little questionable.
Also, just in terms of timing, the Pine Point Road sidewalk addition, that additional length, that'll be clearly the first one that can be implemented. Grondin's already clearly down there and gotten pricing from them on that addition to that project, so that would be the one that would be done first, probably in July, when they're finishing up their work associated with the intersection.
I had a couple of questions. I don't know if that's-
Go.
I guess my question is, you said that there was some potential cost savings, though, with the difference in the, in concrete and, tar, more or less. What kind of a cost savings are you talking about?
I'm going to have Dan speak to that. I don't have the numbers in front.
In the order of $70,000. So the estimates suggest that the Black Point Road sidewalk with a concrete sidewalk surface is in the $325,000 range, and then you're down in the mid twos, $250 if it's a bituminous surface or paved asphalt surface.
So my other question was, what is the lifespan difference between the two products? You said the concrete's pretty self-sustaining and wouldn't need any maintenance, but for how long? And then on the flip side, the pervious surface.
Jim, do you have a good feel for that? I think Mike Shaw and Jim would better get to that.
Yeah, I would have to say you should easily be able to get a good 10 years out of concrete flat work, if not longer. Usually the biggest challenge for lifespan for any sidewalk material is your subsurface soils and what kind of potential traffic, heavy traffic, has occurred on them from a perspective of snow plowing maintenance type of thing. Structurally, concrete is going to be stronger. But I think clearly concrete will give you a much longer, durable, and more pleasing surface.
Okay. And the lifespan on the other product?
Bituminous, again, highly variable, but I think a 5 or 7 year period, by the time you start to see some distress in the pavement from some cracking, perhaps, or a little bit of heaving, you're going to have to see some of that in that kind of time range. But again, tied to the subsoils that are there.
Just if I could, I'm not a professional engineer, maybe I'm playing one on TV here, but Councilor Sullivan made reference to it earlier, and I think it's an excellent point. Because of the construction method for concrete, where there are expansion joints, in the event there are damaged panels, those panels individually or multiple panels can be removed as opposed to, removing an entire length. So the 10-year estimate seems conservative in my experience. But in the event there's damage, you can really minimize those costs for repair. And the other point I'd make is that our experience, I think, should suggest something. I don't know the time frame of the Dunstan work, but I believe it was in the 2003 or 4 time frame. And that infrastructure is holding up remarkably well. Our biggest concern with concrete products was corrosion from salt and other chemicals. And though we do apply some chemical treatments to protect that, I encourage all of you to take a look. Many stretches look as good as the year it was put in, and that's probably 5 or 6 years old already.
I think too, with bituminous, you see it based on the substructure. With frost, you get lots of heavings, you get pockets of water that, stay in the surface, and it becomes an uneven surface in a short period of time. It does this.
The concrete is reinforced with a fiber material. So from a structural strength perspective, it's far superior to bituminous, which typically a sidewalk thickness is 2 inches. You may have similar sub-base gravel supporting it, but there's a significant structural difference between the two materials.
I just want to say on behalf of the committee, that the committee unanimously supported the concrete. And as a person who's lives on 5 Point Road and suffers with bituminous curbing now, every spring it's plowed down, or every winter it's plowed down the street, and then they try to bring pieces of it back. So I can attest that sometimes bituminous doesn't even last a year.
I just had one thing to add too, and I'm sure that the walkway is going to be the sidewalk's going to be the same sort of preparation as a driveway. There's a lot more preparation put into a concrete driveway, soil-wise, than there is with a pavement. So I think that's some of the cost difference too.
One of the other cost things that I would, just looking ahead, are they gonna be plowed in the wintertime, and what kind of figure is that gonna add to our cost of clearing sidewalks? And just, we need to think about that. I'm all in favor of it, but it is going to increase the cost of clearance in the wintertime, which we've been struggling with as we increase the sidewalks.
So true, that's a consideration regardless of how it's built.
Yep.
If it's built, I think we have the
Just
responsibility to maintain it then.
Know that we're creating another bill.
I don't, it depends on how the council goes with that, but I don't believe that that's a necessity to, due to constraints on the budget, that's a necessity that we need to, clear off during the wintertime. I mean, the main idea of the trail, the heaviest use of the trail would be in the, spring, summer, and fall. And most of the kids, that's when they're using the Black Point Road. Some of them do in the wintertime, but I don't see a lot of pedestrian traffic in the wintertime. It's all from spring to fall. So mainly, I think that's the purpose of the sidewalks on the Black Point Road. As far as what we have been doing was have been taking care of Route 1 sidewalks. That may change in the future, I don't know, but it's all got to do with how much money we have to spend, I think.
Well, for me, I personally think if we build sidewalks, and there's an obligation there for us to maintain them, so I don't
Yeah,
think that's an issue for me.
I just agree. I think we need to take care of them in the wintertime. That's when it's
Okay.
least safe for the pedestrian. And as we grow, and as this town and village center of Oak Hill grows and the other centers do, more people, I think, will be using the pedestrian pathways, and we're obligated to keep them safe year-round. I mean, I have no objection to it, I'm just saying, know that we're gonna have a bigger bill down the road, that's all. And just, understand that, but it's a necessity.
Any other comments? Thank you, then.
Okay.
That was terrific. Good news.
We still have a lot more work to do. We'll be back to you at some point.
Great.
As we transition to the next phase, I just want to remind there's extra pizza here. If people want to get up and help themselves again. Certainly those that have joined us now are welcome to have some too.
Yeah.
So we're transitioning to the next part of the meeting. I guess at the outset, I just wanted to take a moment and recognize how good it is to get together on an informal basis and to talk about maybe some forward things as opposed to in the details of the budget or the details of a council agenda. Staff looks very much forward to having a conversation with council and getting a sense of, frankly, how we're doing and also getting some direction as to how to take the next step. So tonight really is the first step in furtherance or to begin to address the council's goal. It was one of your 10 goals you established this year, and it was simply to be a business-friendly town. And the council went on further to kind of define that a bit further. We talked about looking back at the economic development vision that was done most recently, talked about involving multiple partners in this effort. And so tonight, this is staff's attempt, I guess, at kind of framing that issue. And as we think about business friendly, and this is a buzzword that's been around for the last couple of years, certainly promoted by the state. They've got this new program that you can qualify to get a sign in your town saying you're business friendly. We've not chosen to pursue that. But as staff we asked ourselves, and collectively we talked a lot about it, what does it mean? Well, of course, we all had our own definition, and I suspect many of you have your own definitions. To our delight and somewhat surprise, we really find that we're business ready. I think that's a better way to characterize. In our opinion, it's a bit more forward-thinking, a bit more proactive in stance, and a better description of where we think we are. So indulge me a moment to go through this presentation, and I'll ask you the question at the end, whether you think we are business ready. So here we go. So business readiness. We just asked some of the thought-provoking questions. What does it mean to be ready for business? How do we measure up against the competition locally, internationally, nationally? Who's involved in this process? Let's consider the progress we've made. That's certainly a big part of it, to understand what we've done to date. What are those results that help us understand the progress? And where I really would like to spend some time at the end of this is talking about what's next. What more do we need to do? Because this certainly is it's on a continuum. It's a never-ending process. So we've broken it up into kind of two pieces, two parts, if you will, to define business readiness. And the first would characterize as attitudes and actions. And we've listed just in bullet form, and we'll get into some of these in better detail in a moment. But what we mean by this is the willingness to collaborate in all sorts of ways, and that's certainly a broad term. To be flexible, problem solve, certainly be aware of our image and perceptions in the community, business community. That's an issue that we continue to live with and struggle with in some respects. And often perceptions breed reality, so we need to be aware of what those are and certainly work to address them. Awareness of quality of place. This is kind of the planner in the mix. In doing all this, we want to make sure that we're left with the community that we want to be in. And I think striking that balance is a really important theme that we need to be ever mindful of. and also being creative in this whole process. The other part of the definition we've characterized under something called strategic initiatives or investments. Things like having clear and effective ordinances so everyone understands what the rules are, and hopefully they make sense. To have modern zoning that reflects really what the market conditions demand. Look for opportunities for development, whether it's town-owned land or working with developers to change their zoning, to create an opportunity that didn't necessarily exist before. To make investments in infrastructure to ready the community for development. Certainly to make sure our staff is trained and ready to and equipped to deal with the challenges that come ahead. Something that's, I think, near and dear to the council is maintaining high-quality services. I was interested to hear, all of you heard from the podium the other night at the budget hearing, this was on the education side, but there was a business owner, he talked about moving his family first to town, then moving his business to town, and for him anyway, seeing how the town council invested in his schools was a huge benefit. So there's an economic development benefit to investment in education, roads and sidewalks, all of the above. Certainly having efficient processes. This is a conversation we've had every year I've been manager and will probably continue to have. There's a lot of complicated systems we have in place, and we need to be mindful of that and work to simplify that. I know committees, council committees are dealing with simplifying the signage regulations, making them more understandable for the average business owner, and protecting our assets. And that, by that I mean not just our tangible assets, but our values, who we are as a community. Again, that balance piece, be ever mindful of being proud 50 years from now of who we are. This is just a graphic that brings in those two parts, the strategic investments, our initiatives, and the actions and attitudes. And the real takeaway here is that all of them contribute, and all of them are important. It's not any one of them that really makes the difference. And that can be daunting, because there's a lot of moving parts to this, and a lot of people involved. But I think it's just a helpful graphic just to make the point that there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. So how do we measure up? The best line assessment that we have is the vision process that was conducted. Many of the current council members were on council back in 2011. The council adopted this. This was a really exciting project. It was a collaboration between SEDCO and the Chamber. We have a number of, actually, 2 SEDCO and 2 Chamber people here as well right now. But it was a really exciting process to bring those 2 groups together, to sit down, talk one-on-one with business owners, understand what they're thinking, what their challenges are, what the opportunities are, frankly, and to try to make sense of that. So this is a really great baseline, and I should have mentioned, we provided you a number of detailed things. I sent them by email on Friday, actually Colette did, and they're all available on your SharePoint site as well. And I encourage you, if you haven't had time to look at them, please do, because they really do provide a roadmap and I think cover a lot of territory that, frankly, we don't need to cover again, but we can learn from and work from. You might be interested, one of the things that I found fascinating, though we've redacted many of the personal items, in fact, all of them, we've included all the one-on-one interviews with business owners and all of the detailed responses, word for word. And we heard the good, the bad, the ugly, and we needed to. And I think that was a very helpful part of the process, and it's there for you to take a look at if you wish. The other part of this is the visitation program. SEDCO is heading this up. It's been something that they've done through the years. They're just revamping that and coming forward this year with a kind of a brand new program. Their intent and expectation is to visit 100 businesses, and many of those businesses will be ones that we talk to back as part of the vision process, a good follow-up piece. When I conclude my comments, Karen just wanted a few words just to talk about that piece and some of SEDCO's specific initiatives. So the question of who's responsible for this process and being business ready, it's really all of us. And we've listed, and there's probably more that aren't even on the sheet, but just please keep that in mind, that it's a collaborative, collective effort to get to where we want to get to. So some of the progress, I think it's worth taking a moment and appreciating the successes and some of the stuff we've done. And I think this is, many of the people in this room, all of the people in this room contributed directly to almost all of these, and I'm quite sure you'll find them familiar to you. So really, over the past 6 years, and I guess that period of time really kind of starts with the new comprehensive plan being adopted in 2006. Interestingly, during that period, we've lived through some of the toughest economic times a generation has seen. And as we get further and see some of the real tangible statistical results, I hope you'll be impressed that we've been able to do quite well in spite of some challenges. So just some of the things that you've done, and hopefully I don't bore you because you've lived through these all. But just this year, we've updated the Higas Parkway zoning, really modernized that. We understood from talking to the business and property owners, where's the market at? And the council made some very, I think, wise choices in terms of broadening the uses. In the Pine Point area, we expanded the uses to have more commercial marine uses, and there's some exciting stuff going on down there right now. Holmes Road Light Industrial Area, we are essentially out of industrial land in town. The park is full. And through the efforts of the Long Range Planning Committee, a new area on the end of Holmes Road came forward, and just a couple months back, the council passed these changes. The Crossroads Mixed-Use District, this is the Scarborough Downs property, will actually be coming to you at your next meeting next week. So that's been in process in detail for about a year in different committees and is now ready for prime time, so to speak. Signage, to make it more understandable, this is a process that's underway through the Ordinance Committee and will be making its way to council, I think, probably in June. And then in the industrial zone, make some changes to allow broadening the building coverage on lots. And there's some specific examples as to how businesses took advantage of that and expanded in town. That's just in the last year, so pat yourself in the back for moving things along swiftly. Also in the category of progress, this is efficient processes. You know, I've understood this being 20 years in this business, but I'm reminded ever more since I've been in Scarborough how important the process is. For those of you that have, and certainly all members of council, received the product from the Long Range Planning Committee, and before them the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, by the time it reaches council, typically those things are pretty well baked, so to speak. And I think that's important, not only to make sure that you don't have a throng of angry property owners before you, though I'm sure you appreciate that. It's done thoughtfully, it's done deliberately, and it's done very well. So process is hugely important. And it really requires that patience and participation and buy-in by everyone involved. And also, the next piece is efficient development review. From the vision, there were a number of recommendations that talked about simplifying the process, the permitting and the submissions, coordinating our reviews. These are things that continue to be works in progress for us. A lot of it has to do with getting key staff in place so we can really streamline that process. Creating more administrative approvals. An example I can think of with accessory units in town. Residents were forced to go to the zoning hearing board and pay $250 to put in an in-law apartment in their house. Now that's all done downstairs without the fee and without the time and without the aggravation, we hope. That's just a simple example. And creative problem solving. Almost nothing I've been involved with that's worth doing is easy, and so you need to find ways to get around problems. And certainly when you're talking about zoning, there's all sorts of roadblocks that say why you can't do something, even if it's a good idea. We need to find ways to get around those things. Infrastructure improvements, certainly something we spent a lot of time and money over the last 3 or 4 years. Again, during the tenure of most of the folks in this room, we've performed and fully completed the improvements at Higas Parkway and Route 1, shown in this picture here. We are within a month or 6 weeks of completing a major transformation of the Dunstan Corner area. Talked about that a bit earlier. We've looked at, and as was mentioned earlier, we're looking at traffic and pedestrian improvements at the Oak Hill intersection. We now have a dredging project for Scarborough River and the bay, and brought online a brand-new commercial fish pier. All these things, I think, send important messages to the business community that we're willing to invest. And I'm quite certain when it comes to intersection improvements, and I'll use the one pictured here as an example, adding business clarity is a huge piece. We do collect impact fees. Now that we've made the investment, we know the costs, and so the fees, and more importantly, the work is done. So a business looking at locating in the parkway now doesn't have to concern themselves with, well, what sort of improvements might I have to make off-site? They'll make a business decision whether the fee is reasonable and they're able to pay it, and it's worth their investment. But adding that level of clarity, I think, is a very important part. We also list water and wastewater capacity. These are kind of part of our competitive advantage. We have excess capacity in both, and that's a huge issue, particularly when you look at our immediate neighbors. Another area of progress we like to call community, building community. And this is kind of one of the hard ones to define, but an example of that are the signs that are shown here. And you might note that we're trying to continually use the same brand in terms of really pulling together a geographically dispersed community. We're 56 square miles, made up of very different and distinct villages separated by long distances. And we're never going to be one cohesive community. But the signage, I think, is a step in that direction of tying everything together with a common theme, common syntax and font and all of those sorts of things. And I think this is a start of a much larger project that we need to stay on top of. The co-location of SEDCO and the community chamber offices, which will happen as soon as early to mid-July. That's about building communities, putting different pieces, elements that have been doing their own thing and putting them in the same space that I think will foster great collaboration like never before. And the town's involved in the Sustain Maine initiative down. There's some really exciting stuff, putting together a lot of different folks, different stakeholders, understanding and talking about what's the vision and where and how we're going to get there.
Okay.
In that same theme of collaboration, this graphic just kind of shows together, we've got the Scarborough Community Chamber, SEDCO, there's a local offshoot, the Buy Local movement, which there's businesses that are members of all three of these, and tying them, knitting them all together is hugely important. And most recently, we've become involved with the Greater Portland Economic Development Corporation, and that really ties us into more of a regional focus and is another example of collaboration on a regional level. One of the huge things we have is a great competitive advantage. We've got a competitive tax rate. I know we spend a lot of time being concerned about that, as we should, but relatively, comparatively speaking, and certainly from a business point of view, we are second lowest in the county, and that is a huge competitive advantage. Location, location, location. I think being located just south of Portland is a big part. Having the transportation systems in place is a big part. And we can take advantage of that and should. We have quality of place. We have almost everything I can think of, from beaches to farmland to industrial parks to beautiful neighborhoods. And not every place has that. And if you don't have it, it's hard to create it. I can assure you of that. We're blessed with a healthy commercial and residential tax base. We're running about 22% commercial industrial in the tax base. There's kind of an unwritten goal of getting to 25. I think that's well within reach. Having an educated and skilled workforce. Our demographics, we look very favorable in that category, certainly compared to our immediate neighbors. We have high-value industrial clusters. We've got the full range of comprehensive set of municipal services and infrastructure. That goes back to the tax rate discussion, I suppose, but I think that's an advantage in many respects. We have shovel-ready areas for development. The Parkway comes immediately to mind. Enterprise Business Park has a second phase ready to go. There's a lot of great opportunities, literally ready to go tomorrow. And all of this is in a time of an improving economic climate. I don't think we're there yet, but there certainly have been positive signs in recent months, and I think we're well positioned when all of that happens. Let's talk about some of the development activity. Dan touched on a number of these projects, but I think it's worth just taking a moment just to appreciate, and I have to believe a number of these projects are a direct result of investments and actions on the part of everyone in this room. So just in the Oak Hill area, this construction season, there are 5 projects that we'll see under construction. We have the 81-bed assisted living facility. We've got the Biddeford Savings and the other building there across from Hannaford Drive. The office building behind Centervales. McDonald's is building a brand-new structure and worked very closely with the planning board to make sure it's a structure that we want right in the middle of our town. On the Parkway, we're very pleased, and what's shown in the bottom corner here is an earlier picture. Horizon Solutions is now open as of April 1st, up and running. We'll have to get an updated picture because they have a beautiful building. And we really think that that's going to help just give everyone else the confidence that, all right, someone's there. Now we can move forward with our plans. Planning board's approved a convenience store, gas station, if you will, that also includes a separate building on Ginn Road, corner of Ginn Road and Payne Road in that Higas Parkway zone. One of the very desirable lots in Scarborough Downs that fronts on Payne Road has been sold, and I know Dan's fielded a number of calls from folks interested in some exciting stuff there. And in the Enterprise Business Park, Katahdin Analytical is a local business that's expanding, and that's exciting to see someone that's doing well that wants to continue here in Scarborough. And then in the industrial park, we mentioned earlier, one of the things the council did was in the industrial zone, changed the lot coverage requirements. Alair is a biotech manufacturer off Southgate, I believe the street is, in the industrial park, and they wanted to put in a significant addition, but our zoning ordinance didn't allow them. And so I was very pleased the council was extremely receptive, fast-tracked a change to the zoning ordinance to allow more buildings, if you will, on the lot. And consequently, Alair went ahead and made the investment, again, keeping a very strong business right here and allowing them to expand. We also include Quantum Clean. This is a company that operated somewhere off Pleasant Hill Road, saw their business expanding, needed more space. We were able to find them space in the industrial park, and they took up some space that became vacant and sat vacant for just a few months. So again, I think a great example of business that wanted to stay here and reinvest here. But don't believe me, I guess. Let's look at the numbers. This is just 10 years of job growth in Scarborough. So you'll see here, over the period from 2002 to 2012, we've gained about 1,700 jobs, or over 11%. Comparing us to a bit of a larger sample, being the county and the state, these numbers in and of themselves aren't that impressive, and I would note the time period of these statistics are 2008 to 2012, during the very depths of our economic challenges. Most importantly, again, the numbers aren't that impressive, but ours are positive. So in spite of those huge challenges, external challenges, we were able to actually grow jobs here. And you look at what happened across the county and the state. I think that's pretty important. So what's next? Certainly we have challenges. Competition, whether it's And now we're in a global economy. It's not just competing with our neighbors in southern Maine. It's national and international challenges. We have changing demographics. I think that's going to be something we have to be mindful of. We're changing as a society. Our needs and perhaps business needs are going to change along with those demographics. And one of the other challenges is really being mindful and finding that balance in terms of being business friendly, being business ready, but also having a community that 50 years from now, we all, or our children, want to live, can live, work, and play, and want to be here. And I think we can do it, but I think it's something we just have to be mindful of. There's a number of opportunities, some of which we're working on right now, to help further this goal, such as local administration of DEP permitting. This would allow Dan and his staff to do all the stormwater management reviews as opposed to sending them to DEP and waiting as long as 90 or 120 days. We don't wait, but the developer does, and that can be avoided by doing local administration of those sorts of reviews. Thankfully, with your support, we're bringing back on our commercial inspector so we can be ready for this next step, and combining that with fire inspection so we can really streamline that review process. Dan's looking at some interesting things for online and electronic permitting, which we think will help in that streamlining. And the branding and marketing piece is something, this is really a strong suit of Karen's that she's brought to the table, and I think often overlooked but hugely important in terms of really establishing an identity and executing on that. Two more slides, I promise. So, just a thought to the future, maybe these are some discussion points that will prompt some conversation in a few moments. What else can we do to add to this readiness? Certainly ordinance updates are part of it. This is the world that you live in. The infrastructure investments, I think we need to continue on our path. I think we need to be mindful of those investments, but very smart and strategic. Process improvements, we can always do it better. We can always make it easier. Checking in our customers. Karen's going to talk in a few moments just about that piece. Hearing from the business community. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Building community. We talked about knitting all these pieces together. I think that's a piece that requires continual effort. Making sure we keep our competitive advantage. To make sure we're poised and ready to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves. And all of this is the kind of the feedback piece of continued evaluation to make sure we're doing the right thing. And the final slide, nope, there's two, I guess. This is ongoing, it's collaborative, it's a positive, forward-thinking process, and it involves all of us. And that's something to be mindful of. I can't do it alone. Dan, SEDCO, Chamber, the Council, I think we all have to be rowing in the same direction if we want to make this work. And this is Karen's favorite slide, so I allowed her to put it in, but I think she's right in that, back to the balance piece. This is a view looking south down Route 1. In the bottom of the picture is the investment in the area of the old Kmart site. Now it's the main medical center. And as you continue up, you see certainly the commercial strip and Oak Hill in the middle of the picture. And in the distance, we see the marsh and the beautiful trees. And I think in a picture, this captures what Scarborough is. It has the opportunities of commercial development, the industrial park touching into the marsh, but it also has the pristine beauty that causes people to want to live here. So we thought we'd leave this up just to be a reminder to us all that we live in a pretty nice place. So I'd like to just allow Karen to have a few moments. And first, I'd like to be maybe the first to make a public announcement that Karen has been named as the new executive director of SEDCO. So congratulations, Karen. We've had the occasion to work very closely together right across the hall from one another, and I look forward to continued collaboration. And I just wanted Karen to touch on a couple of the pieces that SEDCO has in place in the near term to make sure that we don't lose step in this process, that it's an ongoing effort.
asked me to talk a little bit about the Vision Committee, because it's one of the things we want to make sure that everyone's aware of, is the Vision Committee is ongoing. They're working very hard on the implementation side, checking in with different committees throughout the town. And one of the big pieces that they've started in 2013 and are beginning to execute is really the business visitation and survey program. So some of the information that you saw in your packets, that was done back in 2008, 2009. So now it's 2013. There have been so many improvements and progress made on some of the actions from the vision statement. So now it's time to go back and check in with people. So I will pass this around just so everybody has a little bit of information about that program. And we will have two components of that, where we've got volunteers going out and actually visiting the businesses, but we'll also put up a survey instrument on the web that any business can participate and give us some feedback on. The other piece I wanted to touch on is there's going to be a lot of ideas generated here. There's going to be ideas for, throughout the community and the surveys in terms of what types of things will make us even more ready, even more friendly, if you will, to business. And SEDCO has set a workshop for October, right after their annual meeting, to really take a look with Dan's help and with Tom's help, really where our development opportunities are. Let's think through some of the ideas that may come from this workshop and throughout the process of the summer, and really focus in on marketing. So we want to match our development opportunities with our marketing program and really give some feedback to the council on where our real opportunities are. So that's just a couple of pieces. We do have an information sheet if anybody in the audience wants to fill out and have some ideas about what would make us more business ready. We do have some sheets for you to fill out. And that's it. So, Tom?
I guess I very much appreciate your patience listening to us. This is your workshop, and we'd like to take it in a direction you'd like to go. So we would like to
Well,
set
yeah.
the stage.
Yes, sure. Certainly for me, I appreciate you folks all coming together and putting this workshop on for us. It's something that we've looked forward to and we've talked about a lot. So it's done. I think it's terrific, and for me, it's exciting to see what's happening and what's in the process of happening and what the future looks like. I think, for me personally, to look at what we've done with zoning, what we've done with our rules and regulations and ordinances, trying to modernize, update, correct them, I think it's terrific. And I think you said it best over and over. It's going to take everybody. It's going to take the staff. It's going to take these committees, the chamber, everybody, the council, certainly, school board, everybody to get together, keep being together and trying to make this work. I think one of the things we need to do, to be quite honest, is we need to brag more about what we've done, and what we're in the process of doing. I hope, personally, this slideshow, this presentation you made tonight, even the sidewalk part of it, the earlier part, the transportation part, I hope it's on, 15 times, on cable TV, so certainly the citizens can watch it. I think it's terrific. So I hope we keep doing it. As far as suggestions, boy, I don't know. It seems to me when businesses come in this town, we have that collaborative kind of a atmosphere, that we all get together. The can-do attitude maybe that we have now. In the past, I think Council Roy and I recognize this in the past. People would kind of shy away from coming to Scarborough because they were kind of afraid what they were going to run into. And I think the positive attitude, the positive energy is certainly going to work great for us. And I, again, appreciate what you've done. Council Roy?
Well, I, certainly have been involved in a lot of the initiatives over the last few years, and certainly a lot more initiatives than I recall in the previous years that I've been on council. I think we've done a lot. We've had a lot more forward thinking about where Scarborough was going. And I think certainly the public, the public gets lost in it. I know I get lost, like in GP Cog, there are so many committees and everybody's doing their own thing. And I think that's the one big thing that I like about the vision is the vision looks at all of the committees that we're all involved in all of the time and says, okay, where are we duplicating things and how can we work better together to accomplish our goals? And I think that part of the vision is really, really important. And of course, it's ever changing. All of our committees are ever changing. There's a lot of updates that need to be done to the vision statement as it exists right now, just based on the changes. It's no longer the comprehensive planning committee, it's now the long range planning committee and those kinds of things. But I think we've made tremendous strides and we've made our community certainly much more active and alive and at the same time improved its aesthetics by maintaining our infrastructure. And I think we just need to keep going in the same direction. And again, I concur with Councilor Alquist, as I hope these two presentations do play several times on the cable when people do. It gives them some insight into what's going on, because it's hard to keep up with.
I should just mention, the three of us, well, first and foremost, we've got almost a brand new team that we need to introduce ourselves to the community, and that's to the commercial brokers and to our local businesses, and that's going to take some time for us. I'm the newest, well, Karen's the newest. Dan's been here a while, but I think we need to introduce ourselves, and we've talked about having this presentation, maybe modifying it slightly, but any one of us can take this on the road and present to groups of individuals, to civic organizations, and so we start to have a common talking points and those sorts of things. So that's clearly on our agenda.
I think one of the other changes is not complete yet, but Dan's working on reorganizing the zoning ordinances so that they're in ease of flow, so that you can go to the zoning ordinance and go from point A to point M with ease, rather than saying, I've got to go to section 202 for this and section 504 for this. And so Mark and Dan are working on that, and I think that, again, is another business-friendly approach. Very easy for somebody to follow the process, and we've developed an outline. I think I carry it with me all the time. The commercial development review flow chart, things like that, so that they know process and can follow it easily. So lots of little things like that going on that are helping businesses ease the process of developing a site.
Yeah.
Richard?
I think the first thing I want to touch on is what staff has done with Ready for Business. I think Open for Business has been tainted a little bit by the what's going on with the state back and forth. I think it was a good idea in the beginning, but the whole commotion around it tainted the whole Open for Business. So Ready for Business, what you have there is perfect, I think. Speaking from the ordinance committee, we still have a long ways to go. We still have a lot more ordinances to look at and change, to streamline what we have, to make it easier to understand and easier to do business, I would say, in the town. That's what we want to do, and because we welcome business. That's it.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think what you've pulled together is really good, and I think we're really on the right road. I believe one thing that we could do that would help us is to establish some sort of a timeline right now of how long it takes from the point in time that somebody approaches us until they establish a business here in town, or get ready for them to build, where they take over their responsibility. And I have no idea how long a time that is, but I'm sure it's depending upon what
Size.
they need,
Yeah.
it could be quite lengthy.
Can be.
And I think if we concentrate on that timeline and the things that are involved in that timeline, that would really, really make us a lot more business friendly.
Well,
And
anecdotally,
something that you can throw out to the public.
Anecdotally, one thing I hear from businesses, that it took me 6 months to get through the planning board. Well, as I talk to them, and I ask them questions, the reality is, they got through the planning board in 2 meetings in 2 months' time, and then they had to submit to the state, and that took 120 days. And so, to them, 5 years later, it took 6 months to get their approvals. The planning board's done its work, has approved things subject to them obtaining their state permits. So as I said earlier, one of the things we'd like to do is see if we can self-administer some of those state programs and take them out of the equation, frankly. So maybe it's a 3 or 4 month timeline then.
And one of the nice things that Dan had done for us too, when we were looking at that, how long is something in process, that flow chart, we actually put timelines on the flow chart from start to finish. And so that's one segment of the development process, and Dan and I have talked about going through and diagramming, the rest of the different aspects of going through the development process.
And different
'Cause I think
kinds
that was
of
great.
development. This is commercial development, but, different kinds of development.
Right. So I think it's a very important exercise. And just, giving somebody a picture, start here, and where you need to go, and how long you should expect.
Just to comment a little bit more on the state, assuming some state reviews, the Long Range Planning Committee actually talked about it last Friday, and it's a pretty exciting opportunity, and I think a compliment to the town in that I think we're well positioned to assume some of these reviews because of the robustness of our zoning, where the DEP may find that our zoning is equal to or better than their review process or the review that they're concerned about. So it isn't necessarily going to be, sacrificing stormwater reviews or the environment or anything like that. It's a balanced approach where it's going to be cutting down on review time, but not necessarily ignoring important issues. And it's one set of regulations to comply with as opposed to 2 that are slightly different but achieve the same goals, which, again, for efficiency and streamlining and giving developers clear direction is going to be helpful.
So one of the questions I have, that people have asked me in the past, when a new business comes into town and they want to locate here, how does that work? Does everybody get in a room from staff, different fire department, police department, maybe planning department, and say, here's what they proposed? And do we all meet them at once? Do we all meet them and see what they need so they can hear the same thing? And I've read, and I'm sure you have recently, other communities are doing this now, and I kind of wonder where we are on that.
It depends, but
Sure. I can start. We actually start from the very beginning. If somebody has an idea of a business, they can come and talk to Setco. They can talk through some of the business formation pieces of that. And then when they're actually ready to say, all right, I need a building or I need a space, I can help them find existing space. But if they need to go in a building or they need to do renovations or whatever, we will often walk them down to planning and sit down and talk through what they need to do. And then at some point, they're going to come back for a permit or a process or something like that. And I'll let Dan take over from there.
Well, I guess it's highly variable based on whether they're going into, say, existing space. It's obviously a lot simpler than building a new subdivision or a new building. But I think in the second category, which might be what you're thinking of, like if someone wants to develop a site, initially they meet with myself and Jay Chase, the assistant planner, to review the ordinances, to understand things they need to think about and design for and plan for. So initially it's more one-on-one, and then we connect them with the other key departments, the other key agencies, Portland Water District, Sanitary District, all those other groups, fire department, public works. And if need be, we can have a large meeting to review something. But typically, they go off and meet with those departments or make contact with them and get their designs together. And then as the review process gets underway, that's when all the departments get together around the same table and review the plans to make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction or issues are highlighted and then dealt with.
Great. Okay. Yeah, you covered it. Thank you. Any other questions?
There's one thing I'd love to leave with you, and frankly, anyone that is listening to this. Please come see us. I think I can speak for both Karen and Dan and the rest of the staff. If you hear an issue, however minor you might think it is, we'd love to hear it, rather than have it fester and we need to hear it so we can address it, I guess.
But, yeah, and I think that's fair, and you've been very kind doing that so far, Tom. I've asked you several times if you'd go meet with a business owner that had a concern that was kind of festering out there someplace, and I've asked if you, and you've done that quickly, and I'm very happy that their concern got addressed.
If not addressed, at least
Right.
received and understood and
Exactly.
responded to, right?
I think it's good for our people to get outside too and meet the businesses and talk to people who's doing business in this town. I encourage you folks to get out of this building whenever you can to do that. I think it's really good for us and good for the community.
Is there something that we can do as a council to assist in bringing business in?
Well, the big picture stuff, the competitive advantage, keeping tax rate low, keeping investments, keeping up on investments, being receptive to staff ideas. We bring a lot of stuff to you, and we truly appreciate how willing you are to take it on and how thoughtful you are in the review process. So it's all of the above. Counselors will come and go, and ideally we have a staff, maybe it's not these three or a combination of us, will keep our eye on the ball and keep moving that long-term vision forward. But what we ask is you to be receptive and supportive of things we bring forward.
Sorry, I have to weigh in on that because, we said this at our SEDCO annual meeting. Everybody involved in the town processes is an ambassador for Scarborough. So every time you're talking to your neighbor, to your groups, to anyone, people are listening to you, particularly since you're a counselor. So we're not saying that you have to be a Pollyanna, but we are saying that Scarborough is this great community. And that's what we want you to lead with whenever you're talking to people. Talk us up. People listen, you're a counselor, people are hearing what you're saying, and that message just needs to get out there. And if there are problems, it's okay. We just want to deal with them and we want to know about them. But again, just remember, every one of us is an ambassador for this community.
Yeah, and realistically, we, as a council, we always set the vision, what we'd like to see, and you folks implement that for us, and you bring it back, the changes of the ordinances or whatever that we need to make, and we deal with that, and we try to make it, and what you're doing really is working on our behalf to try to get that vision of Scarborough forward, and I think right now, again, not to repeat myself, but I think we're on a pretty good track, and I think things are going really well, and I think we're on a mission. I think it's a good one, so.
I think sometimes the general public has a perception sometimes that we fast track things, that, wow, they passed that quick, how come, everything was so fast? So I think one of the ways that as a counselor you can be helpful when people ask you questions about various processes that go on, help them understand the process that takes place and that it's not an overnight. We had a recent one in Dunstan Construction, and it was a year ago, April, that we first started looking at that parcel, and it still isn't through the process yet. So, helping them understand the timelines and that it's not, because when they watch it on the council meeting, it's as if it just was brought to the table yesterday. They don't know all the background work so I think that's a way in which we can be helpful. I know I get a lot of residents that will ask me questions about process, and they feel better once they understand that you're not trying to ramrod things through for your good buddy who's got a business he wants to open tomorrow, you know.
I always thought maybe we should have more forums on public TV where, you know, the planning board or the fire department, the police department could, you know, step in and just talk about issues. The town manager certainly, you know.
We lost that when we lost
Sedco.
Pete.
Yeah, we did. We used to have that, and that was a pretty popular segment on the TV, and I'd like to see that again where,
Judy, when you retire from council, I can see you being the one that's gonna.
we'll give her the mic. She's got it now.
Just one observation, many of you lived through this, but Scarborough had such explosive growth for the 90s and 2000s, and we survived the boom years, and we still have a community we can be very proud of. What we've done in the last 5 years, I think, is really put in place some very smart, much smarter zoning, more modern zoning, and great protections to assure that when the next boom time comes, and hopefully it's soon, we're ready for it.
We'll be ready.
And we're gonna have a community that we continue to, you know, wanna live in.
Yeah, exactly.
Market was up again today, 15,105.
The balance is the hard one to keep your eye on, because it's hard to define, you don't know it until it's gone.
Certainly, if anybody from the audience wants to say anything, just step right up to the mic if you would. We gotta hear you.
Rick Shanae, I'm here with my Sedco chair board hat on and my long-range planning committee hat on. But I just wanted to touch on something that Ed said, and Karen and others, about what the council can do to help this process. I think the worst thing that can happen to a municipality is to be stuck with a dysfunctional council. And we don't have that here, and it's great. The fact that you've called this meeting tonight to hear this kind of a discussion about a collaborative effort on a lot of fronts to improve the business climate in Scarborough, to bring businesses here, is, in and of itself, is incredibly valuable. I guess all I would say is, as you go about your business of governing this town, that you continue to do the best you can to do it in a collaborative manner. You're obviously going to disagree about things. What deliberative body doesn't? But when those disagreements are perceived by the public as to be done, done fairly and professionally, if you will, with respect for everybody's opinions, that projects a tremendous positive vision of a town. There are nearby towns, you just have to look in the paper, that have dysfunctional bodies, and I can assure you that businesses will say, I don't want to go and plunk my business down in this town that can't even govern itself. So you are ambassadors of the town. You're the first line in terms of elected officials, and I think you guys have been doing a great job, and I encourage you to continue to operate in a collaborative manner to govern the town and continue to project a very positive image.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience like to say anything before we wrap it up? Any other comments from anybody? Again, we appreciate the effort you put into this. It was well done. Hopefully, we can do it again.
Should we have another one towards the end of the year?
Oh, absolutely. We'll do this again. It's all good.
I think we need
The
to have
update.
more workshops to have open discussions of various projects. And so it really helps us, again, be more positive about things, I guess, and more perspective.
Yeah, rather than reactionary to what's on your agenda, we're talking about things that are much further down the road. So staff
Right.
welcomes these opportunities. I talk to many of you individually, but almost never as a group. So we thank for the opportunity.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.